Hello, I'm Michael Diamond and you're watching Muscle Central. Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about creatine. Now, I did a video a while back about how to maximize the use of creatine. Now, I watch other YouTube channels and I see videos where people are being instructed on how to use creatine properly. Now, not to sound like a know-it-all, but most of them have it totally wrong. Let me say this first. Contrary to what some might tell you, creatine is not a steroid. It is simply three amino acids bonded together, and that's all it is. Creatine was brought to the market in the early 90s. It was introduced by Bill Phillips, founder of Muscle Media magazine, also EAS Sports Nutrition. It was marketed under the trade name Phosphagen. Creatine's been around for a long time. It stood the test of time simply because it works. Now, problem is, are we maximizing our results from creatine? Now, if you notice, most people, initially they get very good results, then the results start to taper off. Now, why is that? Well, let's go to the protocol that people are using when they're taking creatine. They're told to, for 5 to 7 days, you're going to go through a loading phase where you're going to take 5 grams 4 to 5 times a day, and then after that, you reduce it to a maintenance dose, which would be 5 grams a day. Now, let me also say this. Your body naturally produces some creatine, and we do get it from some of the foods that we eat, but that is not enough to elicit to the gains that we're seeking. Now, the maintenance dose is very important because, the loading phase is very important. What the loading phase is doing, it's saturating the muscles with creatine. Now, that's why in initial phases of using creatine, people get very quick results. It's because of the saturating the muscles with the creatine. Now, why do the results taper off? Because they're going to a maintenance dose of 5 grams a day. What's happening is your muscles are saturated from this loading phase. When you reduce it to a maintenance phase, it's not maintaining a saturated state. Within a couple of weeks, your body's creatine levels go back down to baseline. That is why your results taper off. You need to maintain that protocol of 5 grams 4 to 5 times a day. Now, I suggest you cycle creatine. 8 to 10 week cycle would probably be good. Then I would say 3 to 4 weeks, stop using it. Why do I say you need to cycle it? Not because it's dangerous by any means, not for any potential health risks. Simply put, uh, after a while, your receptors get desensitized to the creatine, so uh, it's not gonna give you the same effect as it does as it did previously. By taking off 3 to 4 weeks before resuming use again, you allow your receptors to resensitize to the creatine, so you continue to get results. Now, to stay on a loading phase, it's not a lot of money. All you need is plain creatine monohydrate. I'm gonna get into that in a minute. Plain creatine monohydrate powder, and these days, because they have all these other creatine concoctions, plain creatine powder is dirt cheap. So even using it 4 to 5 times a day, using that amount, it's not costly at all. It's, like I said, plain creatine monohydrate is dirt cheap. So that's all you're going to need to use. Forget about those fancy products. That'll be next after this. Also, when you're using creatine, creatine that's not dissolved, your body doesn't utilize. It just sits in the intestines. Now, some people get stomach distress from using creatine. Why? It's because of the creatine that doesn't get digested, that sits in the intestines, which eventually gets excreted. Why doesn't creatine why doesn't some of it get utilized? Because creatine doesn't dissolve very well in cold fluids. People are told to put their creatine in 8 to 10 ounces of cold water, juice, or their favorite beverage. That's the problem. It's going into a cold liquid and it's not dissolving properly. Do a little experiment. You take 5 grams of creatine, throw it into a glass of cold water, and stir it up. You'll see a good portion of it will settle to the bottom. Take a glass of water, 8 to 10 ounces, put it in the microwave, and then put your creatine in it, stir it up. You'll see much more of the creatine gets dissolved. Creatine does not dissolve well in cold fluids. It dissolves much better in warm to hot fluids. One thing people not being told in initial research with creatine, the test subjects were putting the creatine in hot tea. It was dissolving. You want to use the creatine in a warm to hot liquid. Also, now you have all these creatine products on the market with with high carb, simple sugar mixed with the creatine, and we're told that research says that creatine mixed with simple carbs drives the creatine into the muscles because it causes insulin spike, and the insulin drives the creatine into the muscles. Yes, there's research backing it up, but they don't tell you the protocol used in that research. Let me say this first. In order for the insulin to drive the creatine into the muscles, the creatine has to be into the bloodstream. Now, when you consume creatine, it doesn't immediately go into the bloodstream. It takes about a half an hour to reach it. Now, when you take the sugary carb drink, your insulin gets spiked almost immediately. But the creatine is not in your blood system already yet. By the time the creatine gets in the blood system, your insulin spike is gone. So you're not getting the results you're looking for. What's not told to people is with test subjects, excuse me, the test subjects in the research were not taking the creatine and carbs together. They were taking the creatine first, and then a half an hour later, they were taking the carbs. And that was causing the insulin spike. Creatine's already in the blood system, and it's being driven into the muscle cells. So using all these fancy creatine products, which happen to cost a lot of money, much more expensive than plain creatine monohydrate powder, you're not even getting the results that you're looking for. And is it needed? Do you need to have that insulin spike to drive the creatine into the muscles? In the long run, no, not really. You consume the creatine 5 grams 4 to 5 times a day. Dissolve it in warm to hot fluid. Whether you create an insulin spike to drive the creatine into the muscles or not, the creatine is gonna eventually reach the muscle cells. So, in actuality, you don't need that insulin spike at all. If the creatine is dissolved properly, it will eventually get into the muscle cells. As long as it gets there, it's going to elicit it's going to elicit the results you're looking to get. The long and short of it is, creatine works. Take creatine 4 to 5 times a day, 5 grams at a time, for 8 to 10 weeks. Put it in a warm fluid to dissolve it properly. Take 3 to 4 weeks off so your receptors resensitize to the creatine. Then you start using it again. Forget about those fancy creatine products that cost a lot of money. You're going to stick to plain old creatine monohydrate powder, and make sure it's creatine monohydrate. There are other forms of creatine. Nothing else has been proven to work except for creatine monohydrate. And that's about it for this video. I hope you've learned something from this. If you agree or disagree with what I've said in this video, please let me know in the comment section. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please share, and by all means subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. This way, every time I put up a new video, you will be notified of the video. And Once again, this is Michael Diamond, and I'd like to thank you for watching Muscle Central.